Now, I wanted to try to improvise something that I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I figured I'd make a little video, share what I learned along the way. I'm going to try to make a mount for my radar detector that's coming in the mail in the next couple days. I want to make a mount that'll fit all the bikes that I ride in the course of a summer. So I want to be able to take the whole radar detector, and this was my original idea, to make it in some kind of a tray or a case or something, so it could go pretty much from, and this is just my initial thought, was to get it to come from a GoPro mount, that I could take that off of that bike, switch it on to this bike or to that bike, anywhere I had a GoPro mount. But then I thought, maybe this is not going to be as easy as I thought it would be. When I looked at how the Valentine radar detector got set up with all these various little parts and wires and everything. So I'm really going to spend my time trying to condense it into one small package that I can just unplug plus and minus, and what I did. Of course, this was key to it. Each bike now has two plug-ins. One that I can plug in the electric riding gear in the winter, and at the same time plug in the radar detector. And I don't know if one of those is going to wind up here. Of course, I don't know where I'm going to put it yet, but this should make for a pretty interesting video, because the way things like this evolve, and the way actually all the camera mounts I have on the bikes have evolved over the years. You start out thinking something's going to work, you ride, it doesn't work as well, or some things work way better than you thought they did. And then in the end, you weed through them, take out the best of the best of the best. And so we'll be doing this. Today I'll make it. The next time I get to ride, I'll see how practical it is. And then when it comes time, say, to unplug it from this bike, put it on this bike or the 650, I want to be able to just unplug it. See, now, that was the whole idea. I have GoPro mounts in several places on all the bikes. And I'm just hoping, hope of hopes, you never know how this is going to play out. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to eventually get all the wires zip tied together or whatever. That it'll be about a 2-minute job to take it from this bike, plug it on this bike. Now, in the past, what I've done, just to, truth in advertising, is my goal always was, I want to ride this bike Monday, this bike Tuesday, this bike Wednesday. I have like a pitching rotation. Sometime I'd ride a bike 2 or 3 days in a row, but usually one day I want to go to the next bike. Well, a radar detector, if you only have one motorcycle, you can do it. Jose and Vince and other people I know do. It's permanently mounted into the bike. So what I'm trying to come up with is something that I can just, and I know it's going to be more complicated than I originally thought. Because the way these things always evolve is it starts out being you have a picture in your mind, and then at some point you run into something like, oh, I didn't think, where's that going to go? Or how's that going to look? Or what? Or work out. Now, the radar detector, of course, you want to face forward. I have the choice of putting it here. I have the choice. Some people I've seen, Bob has his mounted on the top of the master cylinder, and some of them are real appropriate. They face in the right direction. I could make a mount. I have a spare bolt here that used to hold another accessory. I think that was for when the bike had clip-ons. But I could mount it up in here, but then it might obscure the speedometer. So again, I'm going to try to share what the thought process is of going through this. I've made a lot of brackets because of making all these camera mounts. I'd say 2/3 of them I'm unhappy with and I abandon them, but then the 1/3 that works, like this one, or the one that's on this bike mounted to the mirror, when you get it right, boy, it's beautiful. And when it's wrong, you waste the whole day. But anyway, we're going to give it a shot, and the radar detector should be here later today. I'm looking forward to doing this little exercise. So a couple little things to know about the Valentine radar detector. The reason I bought the Valentine is most of my friends have all got a Valentine. I'm one of the few that does not have a radar detector yet. And the reason I got this, I was riding with several of my friends, and I was about 3 bikes back. And the lead bike was Jose, and as we're coming up over a hill, I could hear his screamer go off. I saw the brake lights all come on. We came up over the hill, and there's a radar trap. And we would have all gotten a ticket. And that's happened about 10 times already, and shame on me for not doing it a lot sooner. So you also need the screamer if you're going to use that system. Bob and several others use headphones. They also have a light you can put inside your helmet. The problem with that is you have a wire that flaps around, and I'd kind of like to avoid the wire. The screamer, a separate item, that's about $100. This is about $450. And then you have to buy an accessory that brings it up to $500. So you basically have about $600, and maybe with the shipping a little more than $650 here invested in this. And I always think, as many people have told me, you get a ticket in our area and your insurance goes up for 3 years and you get points on your license, it's a lot more than $600. And then at the end of paying a ticket, you still have to buy the radar detector. So here's the thing. I bit the bullet. I really wanted to. It's a long riding season for me. We ride about 11 months out of the year. Typically a lot of miles. And we go through a lot of these idiotic speed traps around here that they always seem to have in blind corners and places they hide in trees and whatever. Everybody I know has experienced that. It's very frustrating. So before I unbox this, I wanted to mention one other thing. Karen and I are Prime Amazon members, and I thought I'd be able to get this a little cheaper on Amazon. It's a lot more on Amazon. It's cheaper if you buy it right from Valentine. And you just look up Valentine.com. So just for the record, I wanted to make everything up front on this. The Valentine one with the laser is $3.99. The remote audio, which you need if you're going to use the screamer, is $49. With the shipping, it comes to $4.64, and this was $99. So I really wanted to zero in. It is about $5.75 by the time you write all the checks. And this is what it looks like when you open a box. You basically have some mounts that probably you'd use if you had a car. You have the wires, the connectors, the various things, and of course the radar unit itself, which is the primary thing. And now, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to have my coffee here because it's early in the morning and I want to read the book carefully. But what I have done ahead of time, I've watched several on YouTube, the Valentine videos that are available, and they do show you how to program it to be even more adaptable to the use, in-city use. We're basically using it only on a motorcycle. Although, I have to be honest, I'm going away on vacation in a week from now, and I'm going to take it with me on a car because we go down the Parkway 120 miles, and there's always somebody with a radar trap somewhere. So basically, as I lay everything out and look at it, everything comes packaged real nice, of course. But again, I don't want to mount it in a traditional way. This is going to be for a little bit different. And when I do get to that part of the video, I hope I'm going to be able to come up with something that's going to work. And maybe even it'll work for you too. If you have more than one motorcycle or more than one. In a car, you can just suction cup it off. But on a motorcycle, a little more difficult. So maybe this video will serve to show how I do it anyway, and not like my way is the only way to do it. There's plenty of ways. There's other ways on YouTube. I've seen most of the videos, and they're all good. And of course, I want to thank everybody who shares info on YouTube. I've used it many, many times to my advantage. Now, this is the accessory for the way I've seen other people set this up, and it's not available from Valentine. You have to get it from SJL Products, and their website is www.motorcycleradar.com, and it is $99. I just wanted to show what all these parts look like, because it can be intimidating to open up a box and have all these connectors and everything, but if I run into a problem, most of my friends that have already got this set up, I can give them a call and find out what I'm doing wrong. So the first step is I laid out everything according to the instructions. According to the diagram, all these wires look like they're going to be way too long, but I'm hoping I can get shorter wires as an upgrade. In the meantime, I'll just leave them all taped underneath somewhere. So ultimately, when everything is plugged in according to the instructions and you have the switch, the volume control, the on-off, and by the way, the new ones come programmed with some extra features that I have to really read the whole manual a little bit better. What's going to happen, I'm going to make a cord that's going to hook both of these together. So both of my power feeds are going to be on one end of the plug that plugs into the motorcycle eventually. But having this all laid out, now I can start figuring out where the hell are we going to put this stuff? And how can we make all these wires a lot shorter for our application? Now, one of the things I have here, several materials to choose from. I have some Nomex, carbon fiber Nomex. I have some real carbon fiber, very, very shiny, nice material. These are all scraps from jobs I've done. And over the years, I've accumulated a lot of stuff. But I think the easiest material to make this out of is going to be actually some 1/8" plywood or some 1/4". I have some 1/4" spruce and I have some plywood. So I'm going to, in the back of my mind, going through all my scraps. Now, you could make it out of aluminum or whatever, but in the way I've envisioned this, I need to make a prototype first. So using some of these scrap materials up, I started by making a little box. It's 1/8" plywood. You can buy it at any hobby shop, any place that sells hobby. The idea is I want to put all the wires in here, have little channels that the wires come out to access things. And I know I need to have this in 2 levels. Here's the reason. If I put this, and I want to Velcro that, I want to have this underneath. So I need to have 2 levels to do this the way I want. But actually, it's going to be a lot simpler in the end. But the idea of the box is that I can bury all the wires. I don't want to have all this junk sitting out on top of it. And by having it, I'll have a removable lid. I can get in at the wires. I can get into change a fuse or whatever. I think this will be the best. Now, when I find out how much physical room I need in here, I can cut the front off. Now that wire that's going to go to the lead, one of the leads, that can be shortened up. But it looks like I'm right on the edge of having a box big enough to bury this. And my plan was I'm going to make a lid that's removable with a few screws. Have this put on top. That piece underneath. And somewhere up here or on the side, I don't know where to mount that screamer. I guess I could put it on the bottom. But it looks like I'm glad I didn't make this any smaller, because a lot of that, I want to be able to just take the lid off and take all the components out, either for testing them or that the only thing I want sticking out of this box is the 2 leads that are going to go to the power. Now, a couple of things made this a lot easier. Number one was shortening, getting rid of all this extra wire, because when you mount this permanently to a motorcycle, you have hundreds of feet of wire going everywhere. It's ridiculous. So shortening, now what I can do is some of these I can shorten quite a bit, in fact, and by taping them up, everything's going to fit in this box beautifully. I'm just going to have to make a lid and then paint the box. But one of the big things that made it easier was just shortening. I got rid of so much wire. And I want to keep it that I can unplug connectors. And I want to keep it that everything here is exactly as it was sent to me. So if I have to send it back for updates or repairs, I can just take it out of this box, put it back in. So I did. I put a little piece of Velcro underneath one of these little gizmos. I'll put one under here. I got tons of Velcro from other projects. This is Velcroed in place. I made the switch mount. This I think is going to be pretty nice. And then I zip tied these 2 together. So the idea is this can just come out, clunk, clunk. I shortened these up, and so this is the wire that's going to go to the jumper on the bike. And it would be nice if they made a unit like this where the only thing you had sticking out was this, but obviously they don't. And once you organize all the wires, and now what will happen is I have a spare battery, and I use this to check my my electrical gear, among other things. What I'll be able to do is plug this in when I'm all done and make sure everything's wired up the way it is. Of course, I have the schematics there, and I don't think it's real complicated, but you got to go step by step by step, because we're using this screamer. It adds another dimension of another 10 feet of wire, but it's all going to fit in that box. And by the way, just another tip, I've really found this to be real handy to have a spare battery. We have a spare battery, of course, with a connector and jumper cables. just for doing this, I can do this without even going by the motorcycle, because I want this whole thing to be self-contained. And this simulates what the motorcycle would be doing right now. So the last step here, and I drilled a little hole so the wires can come out. I want to see what else I have to do. See if that pack that box. And then I made a pattern up for the lid. And this, of course, is going to mount to the lid. And then I have to figure out if this is going to be a solid enough mount on the GoPro, or if I have to come up with something else. This is just a lot of pattern making, a lot of wire shortening. But in the end, I'll have a snap-in, hopefully. And the good news is I can just use this, because I have an adapter to go from this to a cigarette lighter. I can just pop this on the dashboard of my car too. Same thing. Now I marked off where I'm going to this has to go this way. And here's a good modeling trick from the world of model planes. When you want to set 4 blind nuts in, what you want to do is mark the position where it would be in this dimension, and then where it would be in this dimension. That gives you your center line. Now, once this is assembled, what I'm going to do is drill one, put the bolt and the blind nut, they're 440 blind nuts. Once one is in, then drill the other 3 holes. And that pretty much guarantees you'll have alignment. An even better way, if you're really a fussy, like a model plane would be, you'd want to put one in and then put the other one in and then do these 2, because it holds it in position. If you drill all 4 and then try to drill all 4 here, it's a lot less chance you'll get it right. Another little good tip, if you're making up a little box like this, something similar, doesn't really matter. Once I have the screws in place holding the lid on, now I can run this on a belt sander on every edge, do a final hand sanding. And this part should be ready for, I'll mask off where the Velcro is. And that part will be ready to start putting a finish on. I'll put some primer on. And needless to say, let's hope this is going to work out the way we want. But even if it doesn't, we have invested very little money and a couple hours of time. Now, after a final sanding, usually 2 coats of primer is enough. I'll let one dry about an hour. Get a second coat on while one is drying. I can be sanding the other part. And this is obviously one of the things you need to have, is a way to hold this while we're doing the final finish. And we'll try to put a nice finish on this, because we can't use it today. And this finish is going to have to dry a day or 2, so this video is going to go on for a couple of days. This out of the rain just in time. It's not a problem, because we're definitely not going to be able to install this today. But that last little part, I see what I don't know about the GoPro mount. I don't know if that's going to be strong enough. It's fine for a camera, and I've got it mounted really rigid to this mirror, which mounts to the frame. But each bike's going to be different, and I do want to have it as universal as possible. Or in a perfect world, I'd be able to just put the GoPro by hand, slide it on, plug it in, and go. But if it's going to be a little more complicated, well, that's why it's an ongoing development. This is not going to take one afternoon to do, but in the end, I hope we're going to have something that really will be handy. In fact, for the rest of my riding career here, because boy, if you get caught in one speed trap, and we all have, and it's usually, by the time you get done, it could be $700 to $1,000 with all the extra insurance and everything. So this thing, and then in the end, you don't get anything for it. At least if you get this, you get a radar detector. But we'll find out. It'll be fun to see how this plays out. Now today, the last coat of clear is drying up on our little gizmo. Let's call it a gizmo for lack of a better word. It dried up nice, and I'm ready to start. The next step on this is going to be to take it outside and figure out where the mounting point is going to be. And just to mention, on my channel there are many videos of how to put a nice finish, reasonably nice finish on something relatively quickly. This is ordinary automotive paint and automotive clear. Again, a lot of them on my channel. I think there's over 200. Now I just put some ordinary masking tape on the back. This will be easier to mark where I want to put the mount points. And again, I'm working on this on an ongoing basis. not sure exactly how this is going to work out yet. Now, in the course of making a lot of camera mounts, I have buckets of extra little parts, extra little brackets, and some of the brackets I've made to hold a camera on, which I may be able to improvise and use some on this project. This is one I thought might be possible. Now, what I started by doing is making an adjustable bracket. And when I mean adjustable, there's several different settings that I can use. And then I can see, now here's the thing I've learned about making camera mounts. When you make a camera mount, you always make a prototype out of 1/8 inch. The 1/8 inch bends beautifully. Then when you're all done, and let me just show this, because we're going to do this, you make it at 1/4 inch and polish it. So I have made many 1/8 inch ones that they just vibrate too much. I don't want the radar detector vibrating either. But this, you can buy this material in Lowe's. It polishes up beautifully with a buffing wheel. But what this really allows you to do is make a complete prototype, bolt it all up wherever you decide. Now, I originally thought I'd be able to put it up here. I just think it was way too high. It was unnecessarily high up there. This gets it down lower, but I don't want anything obstructing. Now, most of my friends, the other choice I have, I could move the little clock, make a handlebar mount that would rotate in here. There's plenty of room, plenty of clearance. But the problem is it blocked some of, not all of, the speedometer. And the other choice I had was to put it where the tank bag would be. Make some kind of a mount here for the tank, to put it up high. Again, I'm going to start with this one. But the thing is, this is a development that's going to be ongoing, because every one of these bikes I've made several different mounts for. I've changed them, I've modified them. After shooting footage and whatever, and I'm sure with this, no different. This is only the first of one in an ongoing thing, and we'll try, if we learn anything significant, obviously we'll try to share it with a little video. But what this is going to allow this to do is mount up kind of tucked in here, but yet with nothing obstructing it. So it looks a lot easier than it is, but getting that bracket the right length and the right shape, easier to do it with 1/8 inch material and then just replicate it in 1/4 inch material. For people that might not know, back in our ongoing camera development, which there are about 50 videos, I showed how I made and polished and all of these brackets. Not going to go over that redundantly, but anyway, all beside the point right now. I do have extra little parts to play with, and I'm really excited about. Now I'll go down and I'll replicate this in 1/4 inch, and I won't polish it until I get everything set exactly how I want. I'm not sure if this is going to be the ideal, close to the ideal, or just terrible until I take a ride and try it. But I'm going to bolt this all together now and try to get a little test ride on it before I make a decision. But here's the thing, if it doesn't work out and I did this, I just have a bad feeling about this mount, that this is not going to be strong enough, and what I'm going to wind up doing is mounting this right to here, making a solid spacer in between. I can do that, of course I have a lathe, but I wanted to try to make it that I could use the GoPro mount, but I'm not sure if that is going to be the final result here. And once I put the lid on that, I'm not sure how that's going to work. But again, every one of these is going to be a different, each one of the bikes I can see this is going to be a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. Not impossible, but it's going to be a lot of modifications. But anyway, I want to see, and the next logical step on this is just to bolt it all together and go for a test ride and see if that works. So this is all mounted up as one unit now, ready to put on the bike. And my only concern really is I'm not sure this is going to be strong enough. But if it isn't, I've allowed for, and I've got to polish the bracket yet, I've allowed for the fact that quite possibly we're going to have to replace this with a piece of solid aluminum with that angle in it. But that would be as bad as it gets. And this thing, by the way, when having this battery around, very, very handy. Well, at least we know we're powered up. So, I'm going to polish the bracket, go outside and install it, and that's going to be it for today until we get a riding day that we can get a ride in. Here's the final mount, and the way this worked out for me, I put the screamer on the bottom, the bracket polished up pretty nice, and this should be a plug into the bike. And if this works out the way I want, and there's obviously no guarantee it's going to work out the way I want, what I should be able to just unplug this or some other kind of one bolt, single bolt thing and move it to another motorcycle. So I hope that's going to work out. But again, you never accomplish anything unless you give this stuff a try. If it doesn't work, we can always go back to you just mount it with wires running all over the bike the way a standard one would be. But then it's only going to be good for that bike, and to move it to another bike is going to be an ordeal. So again, I hope it works. I put a safety zip tie on this just to make sure, even though it's Velcroed on, I'm not sure if that Velcro is as strong as they say it is. Now, when I get all done with today's session, one thing I wasn't really happy with is that joint. This was too flimsy and loose, so I'm going to try to engineer up something a little bit better. Next time I get a work session, I had the feeling this was going to eventually just break. So I wasn't happy with that. I'll figure something out next time I get to work on this. But it's, as everything is, it's an ongoing operation, that's for sure. So today, after thinking about this for a whole evening, I'm out here fresh in the morning, and what I thought I'd do, I'm going to find out if this is going to work, because what I did, I made a longer bracket. This is the one, where's the one I originally had? And I made it an inch longer. Now the reason for that was, I hope eventually to have two separate things, and I could use this on one of the other bikes, of course. What I want to have is, I want to have this universal adjustability of having that on there. That's one of the goals I had. I really wanted to have it that I could snap it in, but if this, and I don't know until I ride the bike, if this is going to be too shaky, and I'm very aware of that from making a lot of camera mounts, what I intend to do is make a solid piece of aluminum here that's threaded, like a triangle shape, threaded on both sides, so I can keep this in place because these parts need to be adjustable to a certain degree. But I'll already have the right angle, but I wanted to make that an inch shorter and an inch longer. So here's the issue. With the shorter bracket, it comes up and just touches this, and I don't want it, it's going to scratch the paint or whatever. But I was also thinking of another thing I could do, because I want to have a safety, like a safety tether. I don't want to be riding along and this flies out onto Route 80 or something. I'd have some kind of a tether, and I could use the mirror itself for the tether. So that's the next thing. The next thing is, I'm going to put the long bracket on, put this on, see if I'm happy with it before I take a test ride. Now, the one advantage of mounting it out on the side of the bike like this, it doesn't obscure any of the controls or speedometers or anything. But I don't know. In other words, I have this now in two sizes. One, it's about an inch longer. One that would raise this up, avoid hitting the mirror, and gives me a clear vision. See, I don't know how much it distracts it when you mount it up here behind the windshield. I'll have to ask some people, but I know the best of all worlds from reading the directions is going to have it mounting straight forward. And if it's not going to be real efficient, what's the point? Now this is the lower of the two brackets. It wound up being pretty close to what I wanted. But you can see what happens is if I raise this up another inch, it runs into the mirror. I obviously don't want to do that. And the only thing left to do here is to set up the tether and to give it a test ride. And I still have the ability to, well, have the camera and this both on the same side of the bike, of course. So now with this bike done, it's only going to be a question of how convenient is it going to be to mount it to other bikes in other areas. That's subject for another video. But I know on this is the one thing I really wanted to know. I wanted to see if it was going to fit up here, and I'm going to have to make this bracket a little bit longer. I have it up right in front. That worked out good. I actually have it here, but I just don't like the idea it hangs out the side of the bike that much. But I like to keep that for a camera mount. And this bike should be very similar. I should be able to mount it up around the mirrors here, or I have a side mount. So, given the fact we spent 3 days on this project, I'm not sure. I know one of the ideas I have that I think is going to be able to make this even a little bit better. It's going to be a little bit nicer when I'm done with it. Would be, see, here's what I learned from the 3 days. This part here is basically because you have all those wires and couplers and everything. And I think I could make a much smaller box in the future. Remove all the snap apart couplers and just have a little box here that I could hide. I could actually put one box on the handlebars or whatever. But this worked out. At least it's going to let me test the way this works relatively conveniently. So, hey, I hope from this video, and this was a real time-consuming thing, you know, it's not a done deal. It's an ongoing thing, and if I make some updates on this, I'll be sure to make another video in the future. But this at least is going to get me at least having some of the protection of having a radar detector in the future, and it's not obscuring anything. I guess it's the most convenient place to mount it, but I still will try, and it'll be on the future. I'll have this. I was thinking of making a mount for this part right here, where I got to find out if it's a real problem shooting over the windshield, because it would be convenient even having it up here. But that'll definitely be a future video. So again, I hope this gave you some idea of how to make a mount. And no matter what you do, I mean, it's really nice. I originally started this whole thing with the idea I would be able to do it through that. I'm not sure that's going to work, but I'm going to come up with something a lot more heavy duty than that in the future, and that's why I made that spare bracket. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and of course, thanks for watching.